What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, I'm going to go through my latest FPL draft, show you how the team is currently looking. What you can see on screen right now is the last draft that I put out on YouTube. So it's a 3-5-2 formation. I had Luke Shaw plus double Man United attack, Gabriel plus double Arsenal attack, and the rest of the players that made up the 11 were Haaland, Maddison and Bomo, Estepinian and Flecken. So we'll see how that's changed. I did quickly run this back through the My Team tool on Fantasy Football Hub to see what the team rating was, and it currently stands at 94%. So that was a strong draft that I put out, and if you want to go and get your own team rating for the draft that you currently have, the link at the top of the description is what you need. It's completely free to do. If you want to use some of the other features, you can sign up for that as well, up to 50% off at the moment. All the links you need are basically in the description, but quite a strong team at 94%. So I'm interested to see what the latest draft rating is, so we'll check that at the end. So probably for the first time in pre-season, I'm actually on a 3-4-3 formation, which traditionally was always the go-to in game week 1. But over the last few seasons, it's got a little bit less popular, and that's definitely the case this year because everybody wants to stack their midfield. So a lot of people are going for 3-5-2. But there are a couple of forwards that I got my eye on, and I'll explain why they're in the team later on. In terms of the back three, I've got Gabriel and Estepinian, which have barely left my drafts or any teams I've come up with at all. I think Gabriel is good enough that the Arsenal defence is so solid, his goal threat's great, his minutes should be good, that you could pretty much play him every single game if you wanted to. With Estepinian, I think for 5 million there's definitely value there with his attack and output. Brighton defence is pretty good as well, but in the few fixtures where I wouldn't necessarily want to play him, Pedro Porro, who's on my bench, does rotate quite nicely with him. And obviously you've got that little run from game weeks 3 to 5 where Spurs' fixtures are really good. Now, for the players on my bench, Pedro Porro and Baldock, together they cost 9 million, so I could spread the funds and have two 4.5 million defenders instead. So you got Botman, Pau Torres, Henry, maybe even a Chelsea centre-back as well. But I don't know, there's something exciting about having Pedro Porro on the bench, ready to come on, or to be used in better fixtures. I'm a little bit sceptical about how good that Spurs defence will be early on, but I think the way the fullbacks are going to be used, one is going to be more aggressive than the other getting forward, and I suspect it's going to be down the right, and Porro should be basically nailed on. So he's in there right now. It could be a different £5 million defender as well, but someone like Fabian Schär probably wouldn't play him too much until like game weeks 5 or 6. Alex Moreno maybe if he's fit and ready to start the season for Villa, but right now it's Pedro Porro. It could be two 4.5s. And just quickly while we're on the bench, obviously I've got Areola, hoping that he'll be first choice for West Ham, and then Nakamba should be transferring to Luton. At the time of recording that hasn't happened, but it looks pretty likely that it will. So we do have, or will have, a 4.5 million playing midfielder. For what it's worth, Nakamba is not that good that you should now all switch to 3-4-3. He's not going to be like an Andreas Pereira, but if you're going to play this formation, right now it does seem like he's the player to have. The other defender in the back three is Trent Alexander-Arnold. He is back. I gotta be honest, I still don't know whether I'm going to start game week 1 with him. And it's kind of annoying me because players like Salah and Trent in the past, we've just put them in their team, in our teams. We've just accepted they're going to be there in game week 1. There's no point thinking otherwise. But it is different this year. And I'm still, as I've said lots of times now, undecided. One of the reasons he's back is because I know long term I am going to want Liverpool players. And I feel like starting with them and limiting the amount of transfers I need later on might be a good idea. I really do think it comes down to how you view the blocks of fixtures. Like again, I know I've talked through this before, but if you look at like game weeks 2 to 6, where you've got Bournemouth at home, Villa at home, Wolves away, West Ham at home, are 4 of the 5 fixtures, that's pretty good. Obviously, I know they start with Chelsea away, which is not ideal, but that block of fixtures is decent. Okay, 7 and 8 is 2 away games to Spurs and Brighton, not great. But then it's Everton at home, Forest at home, Luton away, Brentford at home. I am going to want Trent Alexander-Arnold at that point. And given that he's got a fair few decent fixtures early on as well, is there any reason not to start with him? Obviously, I could go down to someone cheaper and get another forward or whatever, or put more money in my attack instead. But for 8 million, we know he's going to be great value. He's so good from an attacking point of view. And most of those fixtures are quite good. Like, in seasons gone past, we wouldn't be looking at that fixture run and really worrying about it. And the only difference really this year is he's 8 million instead of 7.5. So he is back in. I would love Salah as well, but it's very hard to have the two of them. I am going to come up with a draft that has both of them and Haaland in soon. But for right now, it's just Trent. And then in goal, I've got Flecken. I don't know if I'm definitely going to start with a 4.5. I think once Onana is in, if he comes in at 5 million, I'm definitely going to consider putting him in because that lets you cover the Man United defence for a cheaper price than Luke Shaw. But if I am going to go for a 4.5, it basically goes like this. If I don't have a Brentford defender, I'll probably go Flecken. I've pretty much ruled Steele out because I'm going to start with Estupinian, I'm fairly sure. And if I do have Henry and Estupinian, I might just start with someone like Johnston from Crystal Palace. So I don't need to lock things in like that right now. Obviously, we're still quite a long way away from game week 1. Decisions can be changed. None of these players are completely locked in. This is the time for discussion. But that's my feelings on 4.5. Flecken we know, Henry. Otherwise, Johnston probably, because I'm going to start with Estupinian. So the 4-man midfield is fairly standard. I've got Rashford and Mbeumo, Saka and Mitoma. All great options for their price. And if I had to start the season with that midfield, I think I'd be pretty happy. The only way I'm making changes is based on knock-on effects from other positions. So let's say that I decided I didn't want Trent or I didn't need him and I dropped him down to someone like a Luke Shaw. Well, all of a sudden I got 2.5 million to spend. So I might change Mitoma to a Bruno Fernandes or a Maddison or a Foden or someone like that. But if I think that Trent is the right choice, then I'm more than happy to keep Mitoma. Likewise, if I decide that a 3-5-2 is better, I don't really need that third forward, then all of a sudden I just easily swap then to a 5th midfielder instead. So I think that's all there is to it. I like Rashford. I like all 4 of those picks. I like Salah, Foden, Maddison, Bruno Fernandes, Odegaard, probably even Martinelli as well. There's loads of good midfielders I wish I could have, but obviously there's only 5 spots total, and right now I quite like some of the forwards as well. So let's talk about them. And then up front, it's Erling Haaland, obviously. My second Arsenal attacker is still Gabriel Jesus. And then my third forward is Nkunku at Chelsea, who I'll talk about in a minute. Now, just to address something that I know people are going to ask me about, why am I playing a 3-4-3 with Jesus when I could be playing a 3-5-2 with Martinelli for the same money? Because ultimately, whether I've got Nakamba third bench or a non-playing 4.5 million forward, it doesn't really matter. So that is something I could do, switch to a 3-5-2. And I am coming around to the idea, mostly because everyone's talking about Martinelli and loads of people have got him in their draft. And I'm starting to question whether I've got it wrong. And I'm not saying that when everyone else does something, you should follow suit and it's always going to be right. But it should make you question whether you've got that decision correct. And maybe I'm underplaying how good of an option he is. So potentially in a future draft, I'll have Martinelli. I'm also somewhat interested in the triple Arsenal attack approach. It would mean dropping Gabriel to someone else, but that might not be the end of the world. So right now I feel a bit more comfortable with Jesus. He's been in most of the drafts that I've created, but potentially Martinelli could be a better option. One thing I just thought of actually, if I needed to sell that player, like let's say I needed to sell Gabriel Jesus, right now there's probably more options in midfield that I would want to go to. And it's not the end of the world to have to change him to a midfielder. It would just take 2 transfers. But it would be easier to do it with Martinelli. Like you could drop him down to a Maddison, Foden, Grealish, Sterling, etc. With Jesus, if I had to name another forward that I would definitely want, there aren't many at the moment. That could change over the first few weeks. Maybe Gakpo or Darwin at Liverpool are an option. Perhaps someone like Watkins, Isak, Wilson, Ferguson, Calvert-Lewin. There's potentially lots of options. But I think from everything we know right now, more of those options are in midfield. So that's something for me to consider. But right now, Jesus is going to stay. And then with Nkunku, I just really think he could be an exciting option that not many people are going with. And I needed a 7.5 million attacker. So again, if I was happy to stay with Jesus, he could have been a Foden or a Maddison instead. But when I compare him to the midfielders at the same price, I'm not sure they're definitely better options. Like you compare him to Foden, you'd assume that Nkunku's minutes will be better. And don't get me wrong, if Foden is nailed on to start the first 5 to 6 game weeks, there's a high chance that I will start with him because he is fantastic. But I would expect over a longer period that Nkunku's minutes would be better, and he's probably going to be on penalties. At least that seems to be the kind of main expectation. And it's a similar conversation with Maddison. Maddison's going to be absolutely nailed on, so there's no issue there. But Nkunku is more of a goal threat. So I think when you're comparing them just like for like, he does seem like a better option. The only issue is he's a forward. And I feel like if he was listed as a midfielder, it wouldn't feel so bad. So I think when people look at that team, I don't think they necessarily think it's weak. But I think because we've all had so many 3-5-2 drafts, it just feels like 3-4-3 is not worth thinking about. But what if I did this? What if I just put Nkunku in midfield? All of a sudden I got a 3-5-2, and I would say that looks pretty strong. Obviously I could drop Trent down and have more money to spend in that midfield to make it even better. but I think sometimes it's just a perception thing. So I think this squad is pretty strong. I think it looks pretty good. I do have questions about what I would do if I needed to sell those forwards. There's not a huge amount of options right now, but things can change very quickly in FPL, as we've seen before. And when I ran it through the My Team tool on Fantasy Football Hub just a minute ago, it came out at 93%. So that's only 1% less than the last draft I come up with. But if I'm happier with like a Pedro Porro or a Nkunku or someone like that, then maybe that's the draft to go to. I've just realised, oh, we're in game week 4, yeah. If you look at game week 1 here, yeah, that's what the team looks like. Now, I mentioned Pedro Porro as a bit of a rotation option. In game week 4, Gabriel's got Man United at home, Trent's got Villa at home, and Estepinian's got Newcastle at home. So happy to play those two, but I could play Pedro Porro instead of Gabriel that week, and that's part of the features on the My Team tool. So if you want to get your rating for free, you can do that over at Fantasy Football Hub. Just click that link at the top of the description. So overall, I think this team looks pretty good. I could switch to Martinelli. We're still in pre-season. There's loads of players I'm considering. If any of Foden, Gakpo, Darwin, etc. get minutes, or look like there's injuries elsewhere, then obviously I want them in this team. But right now, I think this is full of solid penalty takers, players with good minutes, and players with really good fixtures. So I like it. Let me know down in the comments below what you think. Give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure to check out Fantasy Football Hub. All the links are in the description below.